Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work as an engineer for a civil engineering firm, and I do consulting work on the side. And not because I need the extra cash, but mostly as favors for people I know. I've learned that random projects for strangers can become nightmares, so I'm selective about what I take on. About 3 months ago, my friend Mike asked if I'd help his in-laws with some renovations they were planning for this old Victorian house they'd just bought. The place was built in the 1890s and had been remodeled several times over the decades. Mike told me they wanted to knock out some walls to create an open concept layout and add a primary suite extension. He mentioned they were having trouble finding anyone to take on the project quickly, and his father-in-law had said they could use some engineering help. I felt something was off. Old houses and knocking out walls usually spell disaster. Still, Mike's a good friend who's helped me out plenty of times, so I agreed. Mike then warned me that his mother-in-law could be difficult, but his father-in-law was great to work with. I should have paid more attention to that warning. I quoted them a friends and family rate that was maybe 1/10 of what they'd pay at an engineering firm. The first few emails were fine, mostly scheduling and gathering information about what they wanted to do. But when I started pointing out problems with their renovation plans, the mother-in-law's tone changed. In my email, I told her that the load-bearing wall they wanted to remove would require a substantial beam installation. I also noted that the floor joists might need reinforcement since they weren't designed to carry that span. The mother-in-law replied that they'd seen plenty of open concept homes and she was sure I was making it seem harder than it was. She just wanted me to tell them what beam to put in and be done with it. I tried to explain that it wasn't that simple. I wrote that the foundation below might need reinforcement too and pointed out that this was a 130-year-old house with multiple renovations. We needed to check the existing structure before making recommendations. She replied that this was taking more time than expected and insisted I just provide the specifications they needed. These exchanges were annoying but manageable. However, things got worse when I needed to visit the property to inspect the structure. I offered several time options: Saturday morning, Sunday afternoon, or Tuesday or Thursday evenings after 6 p.m. The mother-in-law rejected all my suggestions. She insisted that I needed to come during business hours on Monday or Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I told her that I had a full-time job and could only do evenings or weekends for site visits. That's when she got truly nasty. She wrote back saying that she was paying me for this service and I needed to accommodate her schedule, not the other way around. She said she expected me to make arrangements to be there during the times she wanted. I reminded her that this was side work I did in addition to my regular job. I pointed out that I was already charging well below market rate as a favor to Mike and told her that I couldn't take time off from my main job for this project. Her response was completely unreasonable. She called my position absolutely unacceptable and said they were paying customers who deserved proper service. She said that if I were a real professional, I would understand that the customer comes first, and added that she and her husband had a very busy schedule. At this point, I'd had enough. I added Mike to the email chain and wrote that I would have to quit the project. I told them the expectations didn't match with what I could provide as a site consultant and wished them luck with their renovations. Mike responded privately saying sorry for his mother-in-law's behavior. I told him not to worry about it. These things happen. The mother-in-law, however, was shocked that I was walking away. She sent an email saying I couldn't just quit, and that's not how business works. She complained that they'd already made plans based on my involvement and called my decision unprofessional. I didn't reply. What was the point? Some people don't understand the concept of doing someone a favor, or the fact that when you're getting a 90% discount, you should be extra nice, not extra demanding. 3 weeks later, I got an email from the father-in-law. He said he knew about the problems I'd had talking with his wife and asked if I'd reconsider helping with their project. He promised his wife wouldn't be involved in any communications going forward and that he'd handle everything personally. I was tempted. The father-in-law seemed reasonable enough, and I did feel bad for Mike being caught in the middle. But something told me the mother-in-law wouldn't actually stay out of it once things got going. The next day, Mike called me. He mentioned that he'd heard his father-in-law had reached out to me. I said he had, but told him I wasn't sure about getting involved again. Mike told me not to worry about it. He told me they'd gotten quotes from actual firms, 3 times what I was charging, which they could afford. The problem was that no one could start for at least 8 weeks. They'd already hired contractors who couldn't begin work without the engineering plans. When I said the timing was unfortunate, Mike said it had been pretty satisfying to watch. He told me that his mother-in-law had been impossible for years, always demanding special treatment everywhere she went and never facing any bad effects. Now they might lose their place in line with the contractors they'd hired, and they'd have to move their moving date back by months. I asked if she knew this was because of how she treated me. Mike said his father-in-law had made it very clear to her. He had told her that this is what happens when you treat people like servants instead of professionals doing you a favor. Mike added that she'd been quiet the past few days. I smiled at that. Maybe she'd learned something from this after all. But I still said no to the father-in-law's offer. Some relationships just aren't worth saving, even with the promise of better behavior. The last I heard, they had to push their move-in date back by 3 months, and the contractors they originally hired had moved on to other projects. When you're renovating a 130-year-old house, being at the back of the line isn't where you want to be. I've been a single parent for a few years now. It's not easy raising 3 kids on my own, but I make it work. My son is 7 and loves Minecraft. He plays it, watches YouTube videos about it, has the toys, the clothes, everything. When he found out they were making a Minecraft movie, he counted down the days for a year. The movie was set to release on April 4th, but I bought tickets for an early showing on Thursday the 3rd. I had a plan: pick up my daughters from school first, then surprise my son by pulling him out a few minutes early. His face when he saw us waiting in the school office showed everything. I told him we were checking him out early today. He asked if he had a doctor's appointment. I smiled and told him it was something better, then showed him what I had. When I showed him the movie tickets, his eyes got big. He started jumping up and down in the school office. He shouted about the Minecraft movie, surprised we were seeing it today when it wasn't supposed to come out until tomorrow. I told him it was an early showing I've been planning for weeks. He hugged me, and my daughters smiled too. They don't care about Minecraft, but they were happy for their brother. I buy tickets a week in advance to get the seats I want. Our theater isn't huge, but I know which seats work best for us. The F row, right in the middle. It's the first row in a section, so my kids won't kick anyone's seat in front, and they don't have to squeeze past people to get to the bathroom. With 3 kids, bathroom breaks happen a lot. We got there 15 minutes early with popcorn and drinks. When we got to our row, I stopped. The entire F row was filled with people, a huge family taking up every seat. I walked forward and told the woman who looked in charge that I thought they might be in our seats, and that we had F7 through F11. She was around 50, with a haircut that screamed "manager demanding," and barely looked up from her phone when she answered. She said those were their seats and they had reserved them. I checked my receipt on my phone and told her I was looking at my confirmation. Theater 4, 3:30 showing, seats F7 through F11. She just said they had the same seats, and it must be a problem in the theater system. She didn't show me her tickets. My son looked worried, and my daughters moved around uncomfortably. My son asked me if we weren't going to see the movie. The woman's teenage son rolled his eyes at us, and other family members gave us annoyed looks, like we were causing trouble. I didn't want to ruin this for my kids, so I decided to get help. I told them I was going to talk to someone and we'd figure it out. I went to the lobby and found an usher, just a teenager who looked about 17 and not interested in dealing with problems. I told him we had a seating issue where I had reserved seats in row F, but another family said they had the same seats. He asked if I had my tickets, so I showed him my phone with the confirmation. He said those were our seats and asked if I wanted him to talk to them. We walked back in and the usher went to the family. He tried to explain there was a mix-up with the seating. The woman got defensive right away, saying they weren't moving because they'd already settled in with their food. She looked at her phone pretending to look for tickets but made excuses about the app not loading and bad reception in the theater. The usher looked at me like he didn't know what to do. I looked around the theater. It was a Thursday afternoon and mostly empty. The G row behind them was completely free. I made a quick decision. This was supposed to be a special day for my son, and I didn't want to waste more time arguing. I told the usher it was fine and we'd just sit in row G. He asked if I was sure, and I said, yeah, it wasn't worth the trouble. When we sat in row G, my son looked sad. He asked why we were sitting there when those were our seats. I told him sometimes it's better to be flexible than right, and the movie was the same no matter where we sat. But watching that family taking up the whole row, loudly opening candy and talking during previews, I felt something petty inside me. I realized this was a chance to teach my kids a different kind of lesson. I told my kids that today was special, and they could be as excited and loud as they wanted during this movie. My older daughter was surprised, saying I always tell them to be quiet in theaters. I told her today was different because the theater was almost empty and it was their brother's special day. And that's what we did. I let my kids react to the movie naturally, cheering at cool parts, laughing loudly at funny scenes, and sometimes kicking the seats in front of them. Every time someone from the F row turned to look at us, I just shrugged. My son yelled about seeing a creeper and how awesome it was. My younger daughter laughed about how cute the pig was and said she wanted one. The woman turned around and asked if I could control my children. I just smiled and said they were excited about the movie like kids are. My kids had a great time. Instead of being quiet like in most theaters, they got to enjoy the movie fully. My son later told me it was the best day ever. When the movie ended and we got our things to leave, I made sure we picked up all our trash. The family in front of us left a mess: empty popcorn buckets, candy wrappers, and soda cups all over the floor. As we walked out, my older daughter noticed and said those people left all their trash. I asked her what that told her about them. She said it meant they weren't nice people. I agreed and added that taking seats that aren't yours doesn't make you special, and leaving a mess for others to clean doesn't make you important. It makes you inconsiderate. On the way home, my son talked non-stop about the movie, forgetting about the seat problem. Seeing his joy made everything worth it. I got caught in neighborhood drama. I've lived in Oakwood Heights for 8 years. I work from home and live with my dog. My dog is a 3-year-old Pitbull I rescued as a puppy. I named him Bear because of his big paws. I got him professional training. Bear learned basic commands and how to behave around strangers and animals. Bear has a goofy smile and his tail always wags. Last week there was a dog attack in our neighborhood. A kid got bitten while playing in the park. The boy had been throwing rocks at a stray dog, and the dog bit him. The boy needed stitches. Animal control took away the stray German Shepherd that had been in the area for weeks. It had nothing to do with me or Bear. We weren't at the park that day. Yesterday I took Bear for a walk. Bear was on his leash with his blue harness. We were 3 blocks from home when a woman stared at us from across the street. She looked angry. She ran toward us holding a taser. The woman shouted that Bear was the monster that attacked her son. I tried to explain there was a mistake and my dog wasn't involved. She called me a liar and said she knew my Pitbull was the one that hurt her boy. She came closer waving the taser. Neighbors stopped to watch. I told her to calm down and explain my dog wasn't at the park that day. I told her a stray German Shepherd bit her son and animal control already took it away. She said Pitbull owners defend their dangerous dogs. She said she would make sure Bear never hurt another child. She aimed the taser at Bear. I tried to pull him back, but she was too quick. The taser made a loud crack. Bear dodged most of the taser but got scared by the noise and her movements. He bit her arm. The woman fell on the sidewalk. Blood soaked through her sleeve. She dropped the taser on the concrete. She yelled for help and told people to call the police. Neighbors came over and called 911. I told Bear to release and sit. He listened right away but was shaking. I asked someone to call an ambulance and pick up the taser as evidence. I tied Bear to a tree away from the woman. I used my jacket to stop her bleeding. I asked why she attacked my dog with a taser when he didn't bite her son. She said all pit bulls are dangerous and should be put down. I told her she came at my dog with a weapon. When police and medical help arrived, a crowd had gathered. The woman kept yelling about how dangerous my dog was. She wanted the officers to shoot him. An officer told her to calm down so they could treat her arm. She kept saying my dog was a monster and showed them her injury. I explained to another officer what happened. I showed Bear's vaccination records and training certificates from my phone. I told them she attacked my dog and Bear defended himself. I explained she was wrong about which dog bit her son. The officer listened and took statements from witnesses. A neighbor recorded the incident on their phone. The police checked with animal control about the previous attack. The officer told me Bear was defending himself after being attacked. He said I had Bear on a leash and under control until she attacked. He said they needed to file a report, but Bear could go home with me. Another officer was petting Bear, who wagged his tail. The officer told me the woman had no right to use a taser. She was going to the hospital, but would face charges for assault and animal cruelty. I felt relieved. The officers stayed with Bear for a few minutes. One called him brave for defending himself without causing worse harm. The officer said I trained him well and most dogs would have done more damage. We went home and Bear walked closer to me than usual. The next day, animal control called to say Bear was cleared. They had video proving the German Shepherd bit the boy. The woman, now called Taser Karen by neighbors, faced multiple charges including filing a false report. Neighbors told me she had been looking for any pit bull to blame for days. She convinced herself it must have been a pit bull, despite what witnesses said. 2 weeks have passed since this happened. Bear is happy again. Taser Karen needed 20 stitches. The court ordered her to stay 500 feet away from me and Bear. The judge also made her do 200 hours of community service at the animal shelter. She'll clean kennels and learn about dog breeds and myths. Bear became a neighborhood celebrity. The pet store gave him treats with a card saying he defended himself like a gentleman. I can't believe someone would try to hurt an animal because of prejudice. At least Bear and I can walk in peace again. I watch more carefully now for entitled parents. I need some outside perspective after what happened last week. I'm a 19-year-old girl who's been friends with this guy, also 19, for about 2 years now. The thing is, he lies, constantly. And I don't mean little white lies, I mean ridiculous, easily disprovable lies that make no sense whatsoever. When we first became friends, I noticed this habit pretty quickly. He'd tell people we've been friends since elementary school, which was strange because I literally met him sophomore year of high school. When someone would question this, he'd look at me with pleading eyes, and I'd just smile awkwardly and change the subject. Then came the lies about his house. We all knew he lived in a double-wide trailer, which is totally fine, but he'd tell new people he lived in this massive 3-story home with a pool and home theater. Once a mutual friend asked if we could all hang out at his place, and you should have seen the panicked look on his face before he made up some excuse about renovations. The money lies were the most frequent. He'd talk about how his dad gave him $500 for the weekend, or how he had thousands saved up. But then he'd be asking to borrow $5 for lunch the next day. I never called him out on any of this because who cares? My parents raised me not to judge people based on material things, and I figured he was just insecure. But the academic lies started to get under my skin. Throughout high school, he painted himself as this academic genius. According to him, he had a perfect 4.0 grade point average, made honor roll every semester, and never struggled with a single class. Meanwhile, I saw him in credit recovery senior year, which is the program for students who failed classes and need to make up credits to graduate. One afternoon, my friend, who was a teacher's assistant, texted me about his grades. She told me she had seen his grades on Mr. Johnson's computer and that he was failing everything. When I asked how bad it was, she said it wasn't even close to passing and that he had a 43% in math. Still, I kept my mouth shut. We all have our struggles, and maybe academics was his. During junior year, I even opened up to him about my own difficulties. I told him that I had failed Spanish the previous semester, but Mrs. Garcia had given me a D- because she knew I was trying. I explained that I just couldn't get the subjunctive tense. His response was harsh. He acted shocked that I had failed Spanish, calling it the easiest class ever. He asked if I was stupid and said he got an A without even studying. When I replied that languages weren't really my thing, he told me that was obvious and suggested I should try harder instead of being lazy. That hurt, but I brushed it off. I figured he was just projecting his own insecurities onto me. We stayed friends, and I continued to let his lies slide. Fast forward to last week, our friend group decided to hit up Walmart to grab snacks for a movie night. While walking around the store, someone mentioned college applications, and my lying friend took the opportunity to rank everyone's intelligence. He said that if he had to rank everyone from smartest to dumbest, he would put himself at the top, then listed our other friends in order, placing me at the very bottom. One of our friends said his ranking was kind of harsh. He defended himself by saying he was just being honest and that some people are born smart while others aren't. He reminded everyone that I had failed Spanish, which he again called the easiest class ever. Everyone looked uncomfortable, and something in me just snapped. After years of hearing his lies and never saying anything, after opening up to him about my struggles only to be mocked, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him that I knew for a fact that I was smarter than him academically, and that I just never cared to correct him on it. The silence was heavy. His face turned red. He asked what I was talking about and insisted he had a 4.0 GPA. I pointed out that he wasn't telling the truth because he was in credit recovery senior year, which meant he had failed classes. I mentioned that I saw him there every day after school. He tried to claim it was for extra credit, but another friend in our group said that's not how credit recovery works. I explained that I didn't care if he struggled in school since we all have subjects we're not good at. What bothered me was him putting me down and ranking me as dumbest when he knew that wasn't true. He said I was just jealous because he was going to state university while I was stuck at community college. I told him that I chose community college because it was more affordable and I got a scholarship that covered my tuition. Then I added that he was only going to state because his cousin worked in admissions and pulled strings after he was waitlisted. I admit that last part was a low blow. One of our mutual friends had told me about his cousin helping him get in, but it wasn't my place to bring it up. Still, I was tired of being his punching bag. Another friend tried to defuse the situation by suggesting we all calm down and get our snacks. My lying friend refused, saying I had always been jealous of him. With that, he walked off, leaving his shopping basket behind. The rest of us finished shopping in silence. When we got to the car, one friend pulled me aside and told me that while my comments were harsh, he had been putting me down for years and maybe needed to hear it. Another friend agreed, saying she was getting tired of his lies too and found it exhausting having to pretend all the time. It's been a week now, and he hasn't spoken to me since. He's blocked me on all social media and told some people I'm toxic and jealous. Some mutual friends think I went too far and should have kept letting him live in his fantasy world. Others say he had it coming after years of lies and putting people down. I don't know. Maybe I should have talked to him privately instead of in front of everyone at Walmart. But after years of keeping quiet while he built himself up by tearing others down, something in me just snapped. I know I'm the jerk in this story, but this happened years ago. It was the first and only time I'd ever been to Disneyland. My family never had money for vacations when I was a kid. While classmates came back from summer break talking about theme parks and beaches, I spent my summers helping my grandparents at their small store. I loved my grandparents and appreciated what they did for me after my parents split, but I always wanted to go to Disneyland. In my second year of college, my roommate surprised me with 2 tickets to Disneyland for spring break. I cried. This was my childhood dream coming true at 19 years old. We planned everything carefully. We could only afford 1 day at the park, so we researched all the must-see attractions. The Finding Nemo submarine voyage was high on my list. The day started well. We got there early, took photos with Mickey, and went on a few rides without waiting long. By mid-afternoon, we got in line for the Finding Nemo ride. The wait time said 120 minutes, but we had snacks and games on our phones. 2 hours later, we could almost see the front of the line. That's when we heard commotion behind us. My roommate asked what was happening. I said I didn't know, but people looked upset. We turned around and saw a woman with badly bleached blonde hair pushing through the line with a young boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She was using her elbows like weapons, shoving people while her kid crawled between people's legs. One park goer yelled at her to stop, saying she couldn't cut the line. Another person shouted for someone to stop them because they were cutting. The woman ignored everyone. I watched as she shoved past an old man who almost fell. She pushed a teenager who stumbled into her mother. The woman's kid squirmed between people's legs. When they got closer to us, my roommate and I looked at each other. We weren't letting her cut after we'd waited 2 hours. My roommate said we should stand closer together. We linked arms to make a barrier. The woman tried to push through the gap between me and another group. I told her the line started back there and we'd all been waiting for hours. The woman said her son needed to use the bathroom and they'd be right back. I told her there was a bathroom near the exit and she could go there and then get back in line. She said they weren't leaving the line and told me to move. She tried to push past, but we stood firm. That's when she pinched my side hard. I yelped and moved away, making just enough space for her to start squeezing through. Something snapped in me. I'd been chewing a piece of peach Trident gum for 20 minutes. Without thinking, I put my chewed wad of gum in a chunk of her long bleached hair where she wouldn't notice right away. She kept pushing toward the front of the line, not knowing about her new hair accessory. Her son followed her, ducking under the ropes. People were still yelling, but she had made it to the front. My roommates asked if I had really done what they thought I did. I said yes. We watched as she reached the loading area, still not knowing about the gum in her hair. The ride worker was dealing with the chaos she caused, trying to calm down the other guests who were mad about her cutting. She got on one of the submarines with her son. My roommate said what I did was wrong. I agreed, but pointed out that pinching me and shoving people was also wrong. When our turn came about 15 minutes later, I was too excited about the ride to feel guilty. The ride was everything I hoped for. As we left the ride area, I saw the woman and her son going toward another attraction. She was running her hand through her hair and looked like she was having trouble with something. I don't know exactly when she found my gum, but from the frustrated look on her face as she pulled at her tangled hair, I think she'd found it. My roommate made a joke about karma. We walked quickly in the opposite direction, thinking Disney security might come after us. They never did. I'm not proud of what I did. Putting gum in someone's hair is childish and mean, no matter what. But when I remember my one and only trip to Disneyland, I think about that peach-flavored Trident and hope that maybe that woman learned cutting in line and pushing people isn't okay at the happiest place on earth. I keep my head down and mind my own business. Life has enough stress without looking for trouble, but sometimes trouble finds you anyway, especially when you're buying frozen peas. I work as an accountant at a small firm downtown. My weeks follow a pattern. Monday through Friday I crunch numbers, and Saturday mornings are for errands. My local grocery store, Value Mart, has been where I shop for years. I know the layout well, which helps me shop quickly. This Saturday started like others. I woke up early, made my shopping list, and went to Value Mart around 8 a.m. to beat the crowds. The store was mostly empty, just how I like it. I moved through my list. Produce, dairy, canned goods, all done without problems. Then I got to the frozen section. I needed to grab some frozen vegetables for meal prep. I opened the freezer door and reached for a bag of mixed veggies. I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. A woman was reaching into the same freezer, her arm crossing over mine. She didn't say excuse me, just invaded my space. That's rude. There's an unspoken rule about waiting your turn at the freezer section. But whatever. I grabbed my veggies, put them in my cart, and moved to the next freezer case for frozen fruit. That's when it happened. The woman started screaming at everyone around her. She wanted someone to show her how to use the store's app, but used much more colorful language. She called us all a crude name that rhymes with other truckers and kept saying fracking instead of the actual F word. Her voice echoed through the store. I ignored her and focused on finding frozen blueberries. She yelled the same thing again, louder this time. She repeated her demand about the app using the same crude language. I looked around and noticed other shoppers trying to ignore her too. A couple of them made eye contact with me with yikes expressions. I shrugged and pushed my cart to the next aisle for rice cakes. I was checking the shelves when I heard cartwheels coming fast. The woman moved her cart in front of mine, blocking my path. She told me to show her where the frozen meat was, using her fracking word many times. I told her it was down that way and pointed toward the back corner of the store. She told me to show her immediately. I explained that I didn't work there and was just shopping. She said she didn't usually shop in this fracking store. I took a breath to stay calm. I asked her to stop yelling and told her I was just trying to buy groceries, same as her. For a second, I thought she might realize how she was acting. Instead, her eyes narrowed, and she gripped her cart tighter. She turned her cart around and walked off toward where I pointed, screaming. She complained that I shopped here but didn't know where the frozen meat was. Then she started yelling again about needing help with the app, using the same crude language. Her voice faded as she went around the corner. I stood there, not moving. Several other shoppers looked my way with sympathy or amusement. An elderly man shopping nearby caught my eye and said something about some people. I said I guess she was having a bad day. He said maybe she was having a bad life, and that it was no way to treat folks. I nodded and kept shopping, but I kept listening for her voice. I could still hear her yelling far away. I decided to finish quickly before meeting her again. But as I headed to check out, I saw her yelling at a store employee who looked stressed. She complained about how hard the app was and claimed she'd been asking for help for 20 minutes. She used her fracking word many times again. The employee, a young guy in his 20s, tried to explain while she kept interrupting. She told him not to call her ma'am and told him to just fix her problem. Then the store manager came over. She was known for handling tough situations. The manager asked if there was a problem. The woman said the app didn't work and nobody would help her, using crude language again. The manager told her to lower her voice and watch her language because there were children in the store. The woman said she didn't care because she was a paying customer. The manager pointed out she hadn't paid for anything yet, and because of how she was acting, she needed to leave. The woman seemed shocked and said she couldn't be kicked out. The manager said they had the right to refuse service to anyone causing problems. The woman said she would never shop there again. The manager said this sounded like the best solution and asked her to leave or security would be called. The woman looked around for support from other shoppers. Everyone was avoiding eye contact or staring with disapproval. With a big huff, she left her cart and walked toward the exit. As she passed me, she glared and said thanks for nothing. I said you're welcome. Several nearby shoppers laughed. The store manager came to me after and said sorry about what happened and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine and asked if that happened often. She said it happened more than I'd think, but rarely that extreme, and mentioned the app was actually easy to use. I said I wouldn't know since I still used the old punch card. She laughed and gave me a coupon for 15% off my purchase. I thanked her and finished shopping in peace. As I loaded groceries into my car, I saw the woman again. She was in the parking lot screaming into her phone about how badly she'd been treated. Right as she was complaining, a passing car hit a puddle and splashed dirty water all over her outfit. Sometimes karma works in strange ways. Sometimes it's just a puddle. I rent a house with my sister for about a year now. The place is great and I like the neighborhood. The rent is reasonable. The space works for us, and it's close to both our workplaces. But there's one problem. My neighbors. When we first moved in, everything seemed fine. The family next door seemed nice enough, a couple with 2 kids and a dog. They'd wave when we passed each other, sometimes bring in our mail if we were away. Just normal, neighborly stuff. But about 3 months ago, something changed. I work as a nurse at the local hospital, which means I often have night shifts and need sleep during the day. My sister has a condition that affects her mobility, so I moved in with her to help take care of her. She sometimes needs help at night, which means I need to be alert to hear if she calls for me. It started with occasional arguments. The couple would go into their backyard, which shares a fence with the area outside my bedroom window, and have loud talks. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone argues sometimes, but then it became a nightly routine. Every night, usually starting around midnight and lasting for about 2 hours, they would go outside and scream at each other. And I mean scream. The wife would shout complaints, and the husband would respond by yelling that he didn't know over and over again. It wasn't just annoying for me. My dog would start barking, which would set off all the other dogs in the neighborhood. After the first month of this, I tried the friendly approach. I went over one afternoon when I saw the husband working in the yard. I said hi and told him their late-night arguments bothered me. I mentioned they were very loud and kept me awake. I also told him about my sister's disability and how I couldn't use earplugs because I needed to hear if she needed help during the night. The husband looked embarrassed and said, "Sorry." He said he hadn't realized they were so loud and would talk to his wife about it. Nothing changed. The nightly screaming matches continued. Then someone called the police one night. I watched from my window as two officers came to their door. They talked for maybe 10 minutes, and then the police left. As soon as the police car was out of sight, they went right back to the backyard and started arguing again, even louder than before. I tried everything. I left them a note. I played white noise. I even moved my bed as far from that wall as possible. Nothing helped. 2 weeks ago, it all came to a head. I had just finished a 14-hour shift at the hospital. We were understaffed, I had lost a patient, and I was drained. I fell into bed at midnight, hoping for sleep before my alarm went off at 4 a.m. for another early shift. But at 2 a.m., it started. The wife's voice came through my wall first, something about his mother and money. Then came the husband's usual response. He kept yelling that he didn't know and asking what she wanted from him. His wife yelled back that he never knew anything. My dog started barking. The neighbor's dogs joined in. My head hurt, and I felt tears from being so tired. I had reached my limit. I got out of bed, went to my window, opened it, and screamed. I repeated the husband's words about not knowing, and told him if he didn't know by now, he wouldn't know later. I suggested they should just get divorced and asked them to shut up with plenty of swear words. My voice shook from yelling so loud, my throat hurt, and my hands shook as I held the windowsill. Then there was silence. Complete silence. Even the dogs stopped barking. I could see their shapes in the dim light from their porch. They were both looking my way, frozen. Without a word, they went inside. For the rest of the night, I didn't hear anything. The next morning, I expected an angry note or for them to yell at me as I left for work, but nothing happened. When I saw the wife at the mailbox that afternoon, she turned and walked away. It's been 2 weeks now, and the nights have been quiet. When I see them while coming or going from my house, they avoid looking at me. They suddenly find something to look at on the ground or change direction to avoid passing close to me. I'm starting to feel guilty. I don't usually lose my temper like that, especially with people I barely know. My girlfriend thinks I shouldn't worry about it. She says I had every right to say what I did, pointing out that they had been bothering me for months. When I said I might have been too harsh, my girlfriend disagreed. She said if their problems were truly serious, they wouldn't be having the same argument every night in their backyard for everyone to hear. She thinks I did everyone a favor. She's probably right, but I still feel bad. At the same time, I'm sleeping better than I have in months. My sister's sleeping better too. Even my dog seems more relaxed. It's funny when I think about it. I know more about these strangers' marriage problems than I know about my own mother's love life. I know about his mother's gambling problem, her ex-boyfriend who still texts her, their money troubles, and his habit of never knowing the answer to anything. Maybe one day I'll say sorry for how I spoke to them, but for now, I'm enjoying the quiet. And if my outburst finally made them take their problems inside or to a marriage counselor, then maybe I helped them too. I've been shopping at this Whole Foods for about 3 years now. It's close to my apartment, and despite the higher prices, I like their organic selection. I usually go there after work on Fridays to stock up for the weekend. That Friday had been stressful. My boss had dumped a last-minute project on me, my car wouldn't start that morning, and I'd had to take an expensive rideshare to work. All I wanted was to grab my groceries and get home to unwind. The store was packed as usual for a Friday evening. I'd managed to get everything I needed and was ready to check out. I spotted a line that seemed shorter than the others and got in it. The person at the front was almost done, and there was just one other shopper ahead of me with a few items. Behind that person was a man just standing there with no cart, no basket, nothing in his hands. I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was with the person in front of him, or maybe he was just waiting for someone. I put my items on the conveyor belt as the line moved forward. The cashier finished with the customer at the front, and the person ahead of me moved up and started checking out. That's when things got weird. As I was arranging my groceries on the belt, a woman and a teenage girl appeared with a cart overflowing with groceries. They went straight to the man with no items, and he gestured for them to come forward. The man called to them to come over because he had saved their spot in line. I was confused at first. Then I realized what was happening. This guy had been holding a spot in line while his family shopped. I couldn't believe it. I told them that I was actually next in line. The woman disagreed and said her husband was saving their spot, so they were next. I explained that I'd already put my items on the belt and didn't realize he was saving a spot for anyone. The man said that he was clearly standing there. I tried to reason with them, saying that standing with no groceries doesn't make you in line, especially since my things were already on the belt. The cashier finished with the customer ahead of us and looked uncomfortable as our argument continued. The woman got defensive and said they'd been shopping for 1 hour and weren't going to wait in another line just because I didn't understand how lines work. I explained that's not how checkout lines work and that everyone waits their turn with their groceries. The man claimed they were there first. I corrected him, pointing out that he was there without any groceries, which isn't being in line, it's just standing around. The daughter was looking embarrassed, but the parents were getting more aggressive. The man reached over and tried to push my groceries back down the belt to make room for theirs. I asked him not to touch my food. He told me to move my items back because they were going first. At this point, other customers were starting to watch the scene unfold. The cashier, a young woman probably in her early 20s, looked like she wanted to disappear. The cashier suggested that since my items were already on the belt, I should probably go first. The woman shut her down, saying that her husband was in line before me, so they should be next. Rather than continuing to argue, they started a new tactic. The woman began handing items to the cashier one by one very slowly, reaching around my groceries to do so. I asked if they were seriously going to cut in front of me. The man defended their actions, saying they weren't cutting because he was saving their spot. I questioned who saves a spot in a checkout line with no groceries, pointing out this isn't a bathroom line or a ride at an amusement park. The woman said that they do save spots, and I should have asked if someone was in line before putting my groceries down. I asked who I was supposed to ask. The empty space on the conveyor belt? By now, a small crowd had gathered, and I could hear murmurs of disapproval directed at the family. A store employee approached us. The employee asked what the problem was. Before I could explain, the woman jumped in and said I was trying to cut in front of them, claiming her husband was saving their spot while they finished shopping. I explained that I put my groceries on the belt while they were still shopping, and he was just standing there with nothing. The employee looked at the situation, my groceries already on the belt, their overflowing cart, and the growing line of frustrated customers behind us. He told them that while he understood they were trying to save a spot, the store policy requires customers to have their items ready when in the checkout line. Since my items were already on the belt, I should check out first. The man's face turned red. He said that the situation was ridiculous, highlighting that they were regular customers who spend thousands of dollars at the store. The employee said their business was appreciated, but everyone there is a valued customer, and they need to be fair to all, especially with people waiting. The woman started grabbing their items back from the cashier, making a show of how they were bothered. She said that they would go to another store, complaining that the customer service was terrible. As they walked off with their cart, several people in line applauded. The employee said sorry to me, and the cashier looked relieved as she started scanning my items. I thanked the employee for handling the situation and told him I wasn't trying to cause problems. He said I didn't cause any issues, noting that some people just think rules don't apply to them, and wished me a good weekend. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.